Hey there. So for the tens, if not hundreds of Studio HFL fans, I'd like to say hello, welcome back. I would like to let you know that I've got some more interviews finally coming out. In 2017, I started these interviews. First 50 or so were audio only. And then, of course, thanks to COVID and Zoom, I was able to get video for most of the rest of these interviews. And then life went back to somewhat normal and I stopped editing, and it's been bugging me for some time. So finally, the pendulum has swung the other direction, and here I am finally editing and getting these interviews out. Now, early on, I had sponsors, and I was ever so grateful to have those sponsors. I wouldn't have been able to have quite the success for the podcast that I did without them. Of course, that includes in no particular order, Eastman Music Company and S.E. Shires, Chop Saver, thank you, Dan Gosling, Austin Custom Brass, Hammond Design, Pickett, Blackburn, and Messina Covers. And I think I'm leaving somebody else out of there. I think that's it. Anyways, and also to some Patreon subscribers. Couldn't have done it without you guys either. So thank you ever so much. Oh, yeah. If during the interview you are so moved to like and subscribe, then please do. Don't worry, this is my only ask. You won't see or hear about that again. So now, without further ado, on with the interview. I know we've already spoken once like this, and I'm still thrilled that, we're getting this chance to chat with each other. Truly, and and I told you this, but I'll say it again for the people that will eventually be listening to this is, you're one of the reasons that I decided to start a podcast.
That's
It
awesome.
was hugely inspiring. You and Lance have put together an absolutely ridiculous podcast, and I love it. And
Many
people love
people use that word ridiculous. Yeah. So
that's the magic of it, and so for the last few years, I've been listening to you guys, and of course, I picked up on the entrepreneurial musician, and still soaking up some episodes from that. And it's been great. And then here I am. It's like you finally get to talk. It's like you watch Doc Severinsen on stage for years, and then you finally get a chance to meet him. It's kind of like you're the Doc Severinsen podcast. I've watched you on stage for years, and I finally get to chat with you. What can possibly go wrong?
the last time that I saw Doc Severinsen perform, I went with Joe Alessi, was in town here in DC for the Eastern Trombone Workshop, which I think has been rebranded to something that's more inclusive direction wise. I honestly don't know what it's called. It's like National Trombone Workshop, whatever it is. I was having lunch with him. He asked me what I was doing that night. I told him I was going to see Doc Severinsen, and he said, and he like stopped chewing like mid bite, and he was like, "I'm sorry, what?" And he was like, "I was like, I'm going to see Doc." He's like, "He's in DC," and I was like, "Well, he's actually out of Shenandoah, which is like an hour and a half from where we were." And he was like, "Can you give me a ticket?" And I was like, "It's totally sold out, but I'm sure I can get you a ticket. You're Joe Alessi, So call up Alan Baylock, who does the 1:00 lab band at UNT now. This was right before he left town, and said, "Hey, I need a ticket for Joe Alessi." And he wrote back, "LOL. I think I can find one." Anyway, the reason I'm telling the story is because the first lick that the high note that Doc just laid waste to as at 86 or whatever he was years old, Joe turned to me with the look that like I turned to my friends when I first heard Joe Alessi play live when I was 15 at Tanglewood, in 1990 when the New York Phil came through and did Sibelius too. And he looked at me and he said, "We might be looking at the greatest brass player to ever live." That was, and then then you just compared me as the podcasting equivalent of that, which I try to just, no matter what anybody says, just say thank you, but I'm not sure if I can let that one stand. Yeah, I think I might have to give you some pushback there. But anyway.
Well, if anything, I'm hoping what it communicates is the appreciation that I have for what you've done and the admiration as well. Not just the appreciation, but
that I can say thank you to. Yeah.
Yes.
That's awesome.
So, if people want to know more about your podcast, they can go and listen to those podcasts. And we are going to talk a little bit about those. But, I really want to know more about you and the Rebel Alliance, which you apparently represent, but you're wearing the uniform.
I am a paid spokesman. I need to get that disclaimer legal, up front. So,
Yeah. So, usually where I start with these is like, where are you right now? What are you doing? What's going on in your life? And how the heck are you managing through this?
so yeah, right now is an interesting thing because some things are like normal, and then there's all the other stuff that is not like normal. My son is in first grade, and he is in Spanish immersion first grade, which is really cool. But he's doing that fully online, which is just here, and he's an incredibly resilient kid. But he's trying to learn a foreign language in an immersive program, like as a first grader with like no other kids around. He's an only kid. I'm the one. My wife's a middle school band director. She's teaching all day long, so that's kind of dominating things right now. Is like helping him through that, which is interesting because when I was in Boston Brass for 14 years, and then I got off the road, and 3 months later, my son was born. And at first, I thought I was going to get. Well, at first, I thought I was going to get my master's because I dropped out of my master's to join Boston Brass, which I would do 1,000 out of 1,000 or 10,000 out of 10,000 times if given the chance. But then by the time I got off the road, all of those credits were gone because it was 14 years later. So I essentially had no credits towards a master's, and I was like, I'll get my master's. I was teaching at Mason at the time. I can get it for free if I do it slowly. And I like signed up for 2 classes, and I liked both of them. And I was like, I'm not doing school ever again. Like for as long as I live, I'm not doing school. I'm too busy. I have too many interests. This is too dominating. So, but anyway, so then my son was born. I thought that I was going to, like was going to put him in daycare, but I then realized that I was going to be hustling to get gigs in DC to then spend money to not spend time with my kid, which seemed kind of weird, right? And to be clear, if I had a job and my wife had a job and we needed to use daycare, we would have done it and would have done it happily. I'm just saying, like, I was presented with the opportunity to either like choose, and because daycare in Washington, D.C. is like, it will make you blush. I mean, I don't care if you're 80 and there's zero chance that you're going to have a kid. Like it will take your breath away how much it is per month here. And so my main job was stay at home dad, and I was still like gigging some, and I was still teaching and whatever. But I finally, once he got to kindergarten, like a year and a half ago, I finally was like off of that as my full-time thing. And like a lot of the creative stuff kicked back in, and then, cue global pandemic. And then it's like, he's right back home again. I'd like to be super clear that I am in no danger of the roof over my head not being there, of putting food on the table, of like have health insurance. Like I check every box in a pandemic. So I like how I've been
Great.
affected is minimally compared to, I think, your average person, maybe even the vast majority of people in the United States. But it's just kind of interesting because it was this trajectory. And then suddenly I had 7.5 hours a day, 5 days a week to do all of the TEM stuff, the Brass Junkies stuff, Pedal Note Media stuff, Hits Academy, which I launched, like, all this stuff. And then it's just kind of all like, evaporated because that's kind of how things go. But I'm not playing any gigs right now at all, which is fine. I haven't even really been feeling it though either. I like picked up the bass over there, which I've been noodling on, which is kind of fun. I've been playing some tuba, but not tons. I've been asked to do a couple of those big video things, collages. I think maybe part of it is just that like big tuba collages are not really. I say this with no judgment because if they're your thing, awesome. But I never click on them. They don't really do it for me.
Well, they're not enough bandwidth.
Yeah,
right. I mean, for that frequency, you get
those files are like, yeah, they're always like 80 gigs. Yeah. The no matter what quality that you record them at, they're just multiple gigabytes. So yeah, so it's kind of a weird time, you know. It's like, and I'm feeling quite creative in a lot of ways, but then in other ways I'm not, and I'm just trying to be okay with all of it.
First, I want to say, what's your son's name? Okay,
Nicholas, yeah,
Nick. Oh,
absolutely.
my oldest is Nick.
There you go.
Nicholas Gabriel, right? I got to throw a trumpet player homage to an angel in there. So Nicholas is probably going to look back on the fact, when he's older, he's going to look back on the fact that his dad was there and he wasn't in daycare
Right.
and how important that is, right?
Yep.
And you're going to look back on that and think, you know what? Those were some pretty great years.
Yep.
And
I agree.
so, and I know you hear about this all the time, people weighing the cost of daycare versus going back to work. And it's like, well, why? Because it becomes a wash, right? I mean, money in and money out. It's the same thing. So you're right. Why not spend it with your kid and learning Spanish? By the way, how is your Spanish?
It's not good. It is not good. And at this point, I if I was going to learn Spanish, it would have been much earlier and quietly, so that I could have known what Jose Sabaja was saying about me in all those countries. Like, and I totally wouldn't have let on. Just, like, we could have had like a man behind the scenes, because a lot of people assume Chris Castellano speaks Spanish. He doesn't speak a lick of Spanish. Like, his Spanish is as good as mine. He
Oh,
can say
wow.
like, yeah, gracias, and that's about it. And his accent is just about as convincing as mine is too. So it would have been nice to, because you could see Jose get that twinkle in his eye when he was totally talking crap about all of us, and like getting a chuckle, and we're just, and we ask him what, he's like, I'm just saying you guys are wonderful. It's like, no, you're not.
Yeah.
So yeah, if I was going to learn how to speak Spanish, it would have happened like, 12, 13, 14 years ago.
Okay, you mentioned this group, Boston Brass. Where are they from?
There. At this point, four of them are from not, yeah, well, let's see. One's in Chicago, one's in Nashville, one's in Miami, and one's in Salt Lake City. So,
Holy cow.
and then there is Jeff Connor in Boston. Yes. So,
Yeah.
yep.
Well, you know what? Let's do a left turn into Boston Brass. How you got the gig, and we were there. What'd you say? 14 years.
14 years.
And indentured servitude. Is that? I think you.
The best part about playing in a gig like that for that long is that when you leave, there is no gold watch. There's no retirement. They're just like, it was like, it's like goodbye. It was like, thank you. That was it. It was just like,
Right.
you don't get the gig emails anymore. It's kind of crazy like that. So,
Yeah.
how I got the gig is actually, is an awesome story. I was Sam Pilafian's graduate teaching assistant at Arizona State. And Sam got a call because their tuba player, Randy Montgomery, who played in the Milwaukee Symphony for many years, he left that gig maybe 2 years ago. But Randy they were flying to Colorado for the Colorado Music Educator Conference. And Randy got on the plane and he felt so ill that he actually stood up and walked off the plane before they closed the door and went to the hospital. And I don't remember, there was something wrong with his stomach of some kind, where he ended up, obviously he is fine. This was 20 years ago. But the doctor said, you're not flying anywhere. So they needed a sub, and they needed a sub fast. And this was the first big MEA gig that Boston Brass was playing for Con Selmer, who was their still relatively new instrument sponsor at the time, and their first instrument sponsor. So they called Sam to see if Sam could fill in. And Sam couldn't, which is good fortune for me. And he said, but my TA is the guy. Like, I was playing with Dallas Brass at the time, which that season was very light with Dallas Brass. So it was like maybe 22 gigs total. But I had just gotten back into town after about a month away, including Christmas break. This was in January. I literally was at my apartment with like four of my buddies, and we were all like, we were partying because I hadn't seen any of them in a month. And we used to hang out like 3, 4, or 7 times a week, depending on the week. And I hadn't seen him in a month, so we're all just kind of celebrating. And my phone rings at like 8:45, and it's Sam, and he was like, "Hitz, have you unpacked your suitcase yet?" And I said, no. He said, "Good, you are going to the airport in the morning." He's like, Boston Brass is called, and he's like, "Do you know those cats?" And I said, "I don't." He's like, "They're super nice. You're flying to Colorado to sub with them on a gig at the MEA, and They faxed me the music. I worked at at like a UPS store equivalent. It was like a mom and pop place, but
Faxed.
I had a key. Yes, this is
Faxed,
the
right?
music was faxed to me at the store, which I just went in at 9:30 p.m. and got the music so I could just kind of look at it. 5 a.m. I was checking in at the airport and flew up to Colorado Springs, and then ended up playing a gig with them for 1,200 band directors. Was the first gig I ever played with them, and it went really well. I have to thank Rex Martin, who I studied with at Northwestern, and Sam Pilafian, for who I studied with in high school and again in graduate school, for absolutely kicking my butt with sight reading, because the gig went so well that JD actually, before Caravan, before the last tune, was when he told the audience that I was a sub and that I was still in college and that they had met me the day before, and like the room like gasped. So, which was one of the more rewarding moments of my entire career. And then Randy needed to sub out of a week. That was like a week later, of California and Arizona. And then there was a 3-week trip, like a crazy hardcore trip, like all around. I mean, we went around all of Lake Michigan, ended up in South Dakota. I mean, it started in Kansas, and I mean, it was huge. And then they had an audition that summer, and then I won that audition, and then yeah, and then played with them for another 13 and a half years after that. So yeah, so I was handed my gig by Sam Pilafian, which is a guy. I recommend that everybody get handed a gig like that just while they're still in school. It's the way to go.
Any fear, that night that he called you and you're thinking, okay, I'm going to get on the airplane? Or was it just kind of like, okay, this is what it is?
Yeah, there wasn't. I was obnoxiously blessed as a kid with the performance opportunities that I had. I mean, obnoxiously so. I first started studying with Sam at Tango when I was 14 in the Empire Brass seminar. I did that for 2 summers in a row. The second summer I was in a quintet with I was 15. I turned 16 in the middle of that, but I was in a quintet with people who were 22, 24, 28, and 34, I think. And then I was like 15. And it was like really intense performance classes. I was in my youth orchestra, the Greater Boston Youth Symphony Orchestra. Colin Williams, who's the assistant principal trombone in the New York Philharmonic, was in the trombone section. Jared Vermette, who's principal trombone in the Hong Kong Philharmonic, a position that he won when he was 22, was in there. David Gordon, who's the principal trumpet of the Seattle Symphony, was in that section. I mean, and we knew that it was special, but it was just surrounded by just absolute horses. And we played Mahler too, and Bartok and chaired for orchestra, and I mean, hardcore repertoire. So I kind of felt like I had been in situations like that. Now, not that playing, well, I'll be honest, playing Mahler 2 in Symphony Hall as a high school kid was more pressure than the first gig I played with Boston Brass. Just in terms of internally, it was more pressure. So,
How did you even know? I mean, you're 15, 16, right? And when this
mhm.
is happening, how did you even know how to play Mahler? I mean, how did you even get the experience? Well, you know what I mean? It's more than just pushing the right valves down. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
well, and yeah, the other thing is that I was obnoxiously blessed with is that my first Boston Symphony concert was Tanglewood on Parade in 1975 when I was 2 weeks old. So I obviously don't remember anything. I was, probably just busy, soiling my diaper and, and sucking on a bottle. But, and my parents were not professional musicians. It's not like I was, they didn't force me into a lot of stuff. But I was like surrounded by music, and my parents have a summer house that's not too far from Tanglewood. So we would go to concerts there regularly. And then I would also get to some concerts at Symphony Hall in Boston, and learned to, if you're young and listening to this, be the squeaky wheel. I'm still to this day, I don't talk to him like hardly ever, but when I do, it's always very warm with Chester Schmitz, who was the tuba player in the Boston Symphony forever, because once I got to a certain age, every concert I saw at Tanglewood and every concert I saw at the Boston Symphony, I snuck backstage and would meet him at his locker when he got off the stage. And that had to have happened. I don't want to exaggerate, but it was like 30 or 50 or 100 times. I mean, just like,
Tenacious.
it's just, yeah, and he would always light up and hey, Andrew, how do you get back here? It's like, but also when you're young and you walk in, I would just open the backstage door to, the hall, just walk in. Nobody's going to stop anybody that saw me just assumed that I was,
Sure.
like somebody in the bass section was my dad, I mean, it's like, yeah, I didn't have any, and so, and then so I was just kind of surrounded by it, which some of that is privilege. I mean, that's all because of privilege, but then I was also the squeaky wheel, and I did a ton of listening, and yeah, so we actually, there are a couple, if I may brag, there are a couple of spots of that Mahler 2 recording, and obviously those horses I just mentioned, it's understandable. But there are a couple of sections that are quick in that Mahler 2 that if I played them for you, you would get some pretty outrageous. Yeah. And part of it was we just didn't even know what the heck we were doing, I mean, the low brass chorale in rehearsal 10 and the fifth movement, the D flat major. I mean, like that, the first many measures of that is like perfectly in tune. It's perfectly in tune. I mean, like I think if the five of us played that chorale again, like it would probably go that well the first time, but it might not go that well on the first take, even though we've now got so much more experience. It was just kind of like there was something steering the ship that day. So yeah.
Well, you talk about being surrounded by it. And I know the importance of that. And not the same experience, but the fact that my parents had albums. They had, in fact, you mentioned Boston. It was Arthur Fiedler and the Boston Pops. They had a collection of like 100, whatever it was, 100 recordings.
Amazing.
And an album, Marty Robbins and Hank Williams Sr., Neil Diamond. And I mean, we're talking really eclectic. Right?
I like how you threw the senior in there on Hank Williams. Yeah, the good one.
The good one, right?
The amazing one. Yes.
Yeah. And so I'd come home from school or on the weekend, I'd get the turntable out and I would get the turntable. That Craig, son of a gun. And
throw wood on the fire to get some electricity
and sit and listen. I had no idea what I was doing. I was just enjoying myself. I wasn't thinking, oh, today I'm going to study this and absorb this. And, but I'm so glad that I did it.
Yeah.
Because you never know what gig's going to come along, right? Where it's like, can you swing? Oh, yeah, I can, because I listened to those many good, or can you, it's a country tune, it's like, they don't swing. I don't know. How to compare a country, having listened to Hank Williams and Marty Robbins, you get a flavor. Right?
It's a language.
So when Mahler comes around, it's like, I can speak this.
Yes.
Be glad it wasn't Spanish, right? And all the instructions in Spanish instead.
Well, and when we learn this stuff as a kid, it sticks so easily. I mean, it's listening to my son. Now, my wife is an amazing musician in her own right. She's a rock star middle school band director who, under normal circumstances, is guest conducting all over the place, and she's a really big deal in her corner of the band world. So, I'm not surprised that the kid has a good ear, but you listen to him in Spanish class, and when he talks, when he says Spanish words, the accent is really good. It's really, really, really good, just because he's, and he's listening to it, for a few hours, 5 days a week, but he started when he was 5. And so it's just like, all of us are much more moldable clay when we are 5 than when we are our age now, and anybody, I mean, until the day you die, you can still be, moldable clay if you choose to, and you can be completely unmoldable clay if you choose to. But at that age, there's no decision, right? You just are.
Right.
Yeah.
This reminds me of a time I was in Star of Indiana, Drum and Bugle Corps, way back in the first 3 years, 85, 86, 87.
Okay.
And there were these 2 girls in the color guard, they were sisters from Ashland, Kentucky.
Okay.
Who were fluent in Spanish and would talk to each other in Spanish all the time with an Ashland, Kentucky Donde está el baño? Now, it was great, but they were doing it intentionally.
Right?
They were making sure that accent stayed, but they didn't try to, donde está el baño? They didn't try to put the, what's his name? Emilio Estevez. That's not the name. Antonio Banderas. That's it.
There you go.
Thank goodness we can edit stuff after the factoring. So, where did you and your wife meet?
We met at the Virginia Music Educator Conference in 2003, which was in Norfolk, Virginia, and there's a band here in Northern Virginia that is made up of band directors. It's a very good group. It's performed in Midwest many times. It was supposed to perform in Midwest like next week, but as we sit here recording this, which is obviously not happening, we Boston Brass soloed with them, and then that's how we ended up meeting. And it was, I think the following August was when I moved down. So it was a pretty quick turnaround. So
what instrument does she play?
She plays the horn. She plays the horn obnoxiously well for someone who doesn't get to play regularly. I mean, and she's one of those band directors. She has a trumpet, she has a flute, and she has a clarinet at her podium always. And
awesome.
she has a really great middle school band with, some kids who are taking private lessons with like military bands, people, a handful. But she can play all three of those instruments, can make a better sound than any of her students can, including those who are taking lessons from like some of the best in the world. Yeah, she's really, really good. And then she picks up the horn, and she, of course, doesn't have a ton of stamina when she picks it back up after not touching it for like a month and a half. But there's nuance and stuff. It makes me mad. Yeah, it's like if I take a week, month and a half off, it's like, I can muscle through. It's a tuba mouthpiece. It's a lot more forgiving. That's the other thing. It's a horn mouthpiece. The thing's like that big, and she's still like tapering notes, and I'm supposed to be happy for her, but I'm not. So
way to support your wife.
We all do what we can, Larry. We all do what we can.
Right. I know we're kind of walking around here, but I want to go back to your teen years and this experience you're talking about at Tanglewood. Yes, it was Tanglewood, right?
It was. Yep.
What was your high school orchestra or band experience at that time?
So the Mahler was the youth orchestra, which was out of Boston University. At Tanglewood, I not only did the Empire Brass Seminar for 2 summers, but then did the Young Artist Orchestra, which that orchestra, we played Petrushka, and we played Bruckner 4, we played Copland 3, and we played it was insane. And that, like Jen Montone, principal horn of Philadelphia. I mean, the list again just keeps going on and on and on of people that I got to play with at that age. My high school experience, like in my actual school, was not as good of a story. How do I put this diplomatically? When I got to the high school, my first year, there was 14 kids in the band. And this is in like a town where like that does today and should always have a thriving band program. This is like a town that supports it. And has still, to my knowledge, never had a marching band, which is not super uncommon in Massachusetts. There's like plenty of great programs that don't, and plenty that do. But yeah, the guy who was the band director had been the choir director, and he was like on his way out, and he couldn't really be bothered. And then someone took over who was young, and he and I ended up really butting heads quite a bit. I kind of took it upon myself as like the union rep, because he'd kind of take it, take some things out on us, and I didn't really appreciate it. And I, whether it was real or perceived, I felt like I had the cachet to speak up, and and so we kind of did this. So,
are you sure you're not a trumpet player at heart? Because that sounds like how we react. And
well, not only the behavior, but also the justification for it. It's very trumpet-like. Yeah,
absolutely.
I would love to argue with you, but no, But yeah, and yes, I did. I did. I think this is proof that, like, for some people, I can be one of these people when I'm not right. You're a teenager, you kind of get a pass, but like, it can never be enough, right? I mean, I'm in like this like world class youth orchestra, like ridiculous world class like summer stuff, and studying with Sam and this that, and I was still pissed that my high school band experience wasn't better. It's just kind of like,
Yeah.
I hit the lottery. I mean, I just
Yeah.
I hit the lottery with and with my private teachers too. I studied with Julian Dixon, who plays in the Sacramento Symphony, teaches at Sacramento State, who was hand selected by Sam. I studied with Sam each summer. Sam was on the road like nonstop, so he didn't really have any students like during the year except for the BU students that he kind of fit in. I studied with Gary Offenloch, who was in the Utah Symphony for a long time. He just recently retired. He did a 1-year sabbatical in Boston. So I had amazing private teachers as well. Yeah, I've got no excuses. So
I love the story, like when you first met Sam. And I don't remember what age you said you were, but what really comes through in that is that there was a connection, that he took the time. The impression was that he took the time to stop and talk directly to you and listen directly to you. And I love that. And it's like, that's kind of what you want every experience with meeting an idol to be, right?
yes, I feel incredibly lucky that I have. Well, I guess I've gotten to meet probably three really huge heroes in my life, and all three of them were amazing because they say don't meet your heroes. Sam was the first one who turned out became like a second father to me. I mean, like very, very, very close. And I'm still very close with his with his wife and with his son Alex. And then Arnold Jacobs, who I met, I had one lesson with him, and I mean, I had a lesson with him, and I went to some master classes. So like, there's no comparison between the relationship I had with Sam and and Mr. Jacobs. But again, Mr. Jacobs was just like, boy, there was no part of him that was like, he was 79 when I had the lesson with him, and he was fully present for that lesson. Like he was all about teaching me for that hour, and there was nothing
Nice.
else on his mind. And there was, and then the other one was Trey Anastasio, who's the guitar player for the band Phish, and who's a literal rock star. And and he is remarkable. I mean, he will look you right in the eyes. He asks you as many questions about you as he allows you to ask him about him. I mean, he's like, they're just kids. I don't, I used to, especially in Boston Brass, I used to get pulled in a lot of directions a lot of the time. And, it can be hard to be on, if you will, all the time. So when people are as on as well as Sam is, and as Trey is, and as by all reports, including a little bit of firsthand, as Mr. Jacobs was, I guess, really exemplary. And I try to follow that model.
Okay. I can get your tuba idols,
Hmm.
but what is it? Is it the entertainment value? Is it the connection with an audience that you're talking about with Trey? What is it that really draws you to him?
How many hours do we have left in this
I
episode?
can go double speed during this section if you need me.
And by double speed, he means edit this out.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can go infinite speed, which means it just doesn't get aired. The well,
Loop speed.
I will.
Sorry,
Yeah,
Gary.
there you go. I
Yes,
like
there we
it.
go.
There you
Thank
go.
you.
There you go. We're not so old that we don't get that reference. That's good. The I saw a ton of hard rock, heavy metal concerts growing up. Van Halen multiple times, Guns N' Roses multiple times, Metallica, Faith No More, Alice in Chains, Soundgarden, Pearl Jam. I love them all. AC/DC. It's like explosions and there's light shows, there's flames shooting out of stages and all that. And I loved all of it on top of the musicianship. When I saw my first Phish show, which was at the Worcester Centrum, there was like 13,000 people there, completely sold out. These four guys who looked like they were coming from like a Dungeons and Dragons convention. I mean, if we're being honest, there was no Jimmy Page dragon pants. There was no, they fashionistas. They were not. they just walked out, like just kind of like walked out, like smiling, waved. And then, Trey put the guitar strap on, and then they launched into like the musical equivalent of flames shooting out of the stage, and all of the fixins of an AC/DC concert with fake cannons and, the whole thing. That was really endearing. But the very first show that I saw, they sang a barbershop quartet tune. They did an acoustic bluegrass tune. They played like straight ahead, like blistering blues rock and roll, like Stevie Ray Vaughan type style. I mean, they did more improvisational, open-ended jamming. This was all in just the first concert that I saw, and they did every one of those styles to the point where you could have guessed that that was their regular home base, and that they were experimenting with the others, which was like kind of like the rock equivalent of Sam Pilafian. I mean, where I saw Sam do a free improv gig once in the Berkshires. It was like me and my dad were two of like 12 people in the audience at this bed and breakfast, outside of Stockbridge. And I mean, like, at one point, Sam took his mouthpiece off and turned it around and put it on backwards, and then was like singing into the shank of the mouthpiece, going, it's like, and it was like that kind of music. I love that kind of music when it's done well. When it's done poorly, it could sound like you, me, and my son just making a funny video, but it was like really great. But then also I've, seen him play with Orchestra, seen him play, completely straight ahead with Empire, play with Traveling Light, like, jazz background, jazz featured soloist. I mean, the whole deal. And Phish kind of like embodied that. Hold on, I've actually never drawn that parallel. I've talked about Phish for like thousands of hours. That Phish was kind of like the equivalent of Sam Pilafian. And then, by the way, fast forward 12 months. That was New Year's 93 on December 9th, 1994. We just passed the anniversary. I actually flew down to Arizona from Chicago under the guise of investigating graduate school, which was total bullcrap, just to take Sam to his first Phish show, and which is at the Mesa Amphitheater. And the very first tune, which happened to be the exact same tune that they opened my show with, which is not common at all, like just the fact that because they mix up set lists famously. In the middle of this blistering 4.5 minute opening number, the drummer did a quarter note triplet fill that like exploded as the guitar player went up and he went down, and at that moment, Sam, and he wasn't doing this for me, he was staring at the band. It was involuntary. He pumped both fists in the air and screamed, we'll just say, heck yeah. That was not the word that he used, at the top of his lungs, which was the single most validating moment of my entire life. And yeah, it was like really, I mean, he got it, in quotes, the it. It's like, why do you love? Last night we interviewed Dave Crable, the former principal horn of the San Francisco Symphony and former, assistant principal of the Chicago Symphony under Reiner. I mean, we were talking to him about auditioning for Reiner and studying with Phil Farkas, and it was like, how is this real?
Right.
And we were talking about how I was telling him how great all of those San Francisco Blomstead recordings of like the Nielsen symphonies, and just how there's like a certain it to those Blomstead San Francisco recordings from the 80s that you just can't really put into words. And seeing Sam, my musical mentor, who was like a second father, like instantly get that. I mean, I would have raised thousands of dollars pre-Kickstarter if I could have bought that reaction out of Sam. That's how validating it was to me. And it just kind of all came together. So yeah, Trey and Sam, there's kind of a lot of there's a lot of parallels there. I wish they could have met, so they did not, but yeah, it would have been great.
So what's the count? What are you up to Phish concerts now? Is it over 200?
201.
101.
Yes. Yeah.
And they're not done touring, right? I mean, they're once things get back to normal, they'll be out again.
I have tickets to see them. It got pushed back a year. I'm actually really disappointed because one of the shows I was supposed to see this summer, speaking of metal, this was in Hershey, Pennsylvania, when Phish was going to be in the Hershey Coliseum, and then in the indoor arena, and then across the parking lot is this huge outdoor arena, and the same night was Def Leppard, Poison, and Motley Crue. And like, so there was going to be like the hippies at the Phish show, like with like the old weathered 80s metalheads. It was going to be in the same parking lot. And it was going to be one of the most spectacular sociological experiments in the history of this fine nation. And sadly, the metal gig got rescheduled for like a different week. And I think they're both going to get rescheduled again. Personally, I don't think we're going to be in rock concerts in August. I hope I'm wrong. It'd be awesome if I was, but yeah, I was really looking forward to that convergence.
So 201 concerts. I mean, at what point should the bands offer you like a courtesy card? You know, you get a punch. I mean, you buy 10, get one free. I mean,
There are people that have seen more than me, believe it or not. So yeah, and I have gotten into a couple of them free. So but yeah, I'm happy to pay. So yep.
Two different directions I want to go. One, I want to go to, of course, not just the Empire Brass Institute or workshop. What was it called?
Empire Brass Seminar.
Seminar. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But of course, Empire's impact on you prior to that, significant. I mean, that's how you found out about Sam.
Yes. I went to. It was 1988 was when I went to my first Empire Brass show, which was something they used to do at Tanglewood called Walks and Talks, which there was a tour of the grounds, and then there was a small performance by a group that was accompanied with like a talk that was like in a tent, on the grounds at Tanglewood, and that was when I got to meet him. And there's actually a photo of right before I got to meet him. Like my mother snapped it. My back is to the camera, and my shoulders are just completely slouched, and I'm just, you can only see the back of my head, but I'm just kind of like looking in awe. We'll just say that I did not. Yeah, it was not long thereafter that I no longer looked up to Sam, literally, because I quickly became taller than him, because he was not the. I used to call him the Yoda of the tuba, and he would always be like, "Is that a short joke, Hitz?" And I was like, "If you want it to be, then yes, yeah." So, but so that's when I got to meet him, and then I got to see him a couple of times at Tanglewood, and then it was the summer after my freshman year of high school was when I got to do that seminar, which was it was I mean I don't think nothing like that exists right now. This is Empire. Every day we had each quintet Monday through Friday had 2 rehearsals. The one in the morning was coached by someone in the Atlantic Brass Quintet. So John Manning or Joe Foley or John Fietta or Jeff Luke, are all like still huge names in the business. And the horn player was Bob Anderson at the time. And then in the afternoon, so that was like a 2-hour coaching with a member of Atlantic. And then in the afternoon was a 2-hour coaching with one of the members of Empire Brass. And that happened. So there's 4 hours of coaching, like 20 hours a week. Yeah. And I guess on Fridays we didn't have that second coaching because we had performance class. And then performance class was for all 6 quintets and all of Empire Brass and all of Atlantic Brass. And then there was usually some like TMC, older kids hanging around. And it was like really, really high pressure stuff. And then we also got to see Empire do an open rehearsal, 5 days a week for 4 straight weeks, rehearsing, everything under the sun. So you want to talk about getting well versed in quintet? I mean, I was hearing the greatest quintet for my taste to ever live, like at the height of their powers, where I was hearing them play 10 hours a week, and then hearing them play in coachings, and then hearing Atlantic rehearse, and it was just like, it was just like immersion. It was like my kids getting with Spanish. Yeah, quintet immersion.
I've had the good fortune to talk to Mark Reese, Jeff Kernow, Scott Hartman, and I would have, and of course I interviewed them for who they are, but we also talked about their time with Empire and with Canadian Brass. I've talked to many of the people that have been through there, and Ronnie, one of the nicest guys, right? Ronnie Ron, one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. Um, and it's nice to be able to get an insight into how those groups operated. And, of course, when people talk about Empire, Rolf and his Buddy Rich kind of approach to things sometimes,
And that was real. That was real.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, and I'm not asking you to share any of that, but I'm sure Sam probably gave you some insight into how intense that was.
Oh, and I saw it firsthand. I mean, yeah, I mean, with all those open, it's like when you're seeing open rehearsal every day for a couple hours, this is not like, okay, it's Wednesday at 2, so the kids are in here for this hour, so let's just let's stay focused. This is like, no, and when I say kids, a lot of them were a lot older than me, but no, we were there. Well, I'll tell you one story, which I shared with Scott. I reminded him of when we interviewed him, was that they did something, and Rolf had some impossible piccolo line, which he probably wrote for himself, which was probably contributing to his anger, and he stopped and he snapped it off his face, and he then turned to Scott and started yelling at Scott. And even though I'm like 14, 15, I'm like, I know it's like you just screwed it. It's like conductors do that all the time, right? Like you screw up the beat pattern, and before like the first wrong measure ends, you're like, second trumpet. You're like, really, dude? Like, come on, like what's going on here? But he turned to Scott and he said, I'm not exaggerating. He's like, Scott. I mean, he's like yelling at him. He's like, Scott, he said that A, like in measure, and he's like, look at the music, measure 25, that A that you hold. He's like, I can't believe. He's like, that's like one of the most out of tune notes that I have ever heard in my entire I think he probably even said gosh darn life. I didn't ask you if there's any cursing, so I'm doing you a favor.
Feel free. No.
So yeah. So he said, it's like that's one of the most out of tune goddamn notes I've ever heard in my entire life. He's like, I just have one question. If I hadn't stopped and pointed that out, would you have just held that note that flat forever? And Scott completely just went probably. And that was when like a vein bulged out of here, and like there was like a vein bulged out of his, and that was the one time I saw Sam actually kind of like move his tuba in front of him to like empty the spit or something. He was hiding behind the tuba because he was smiling. Eric Russ kind of strolled around the corner to like, because we could see him laughing, but Rolf couldn't. And Jeff looked like a statue, like at a museum. So just completely still. But that kind of thing happened kind of frequently, actually.
So this sets the expectation, right? When you go to Dallas Brass, you're expecting this kind of tension. When you go to Boston Brass, you're expecting these kind of dynamics, right? I mean, you're ready to pop off at a trombone player at any moment.
Well, I was
with Dallas Brass, maybe so.
Right? My first, nobody likes the boss ever, right? It's like that's always who people rally against. So. Dating back to my my union activism in high school band. But the very first day that I was at Tanglewood, Sam was talking to us and was in the middle of a sentence, and then from through the trees, like on the other side of these of some trees, the trumpets were meeting. There were there's 12 of them. And they played like a unison B flat out of nowhere that was kind of loud, and it was kind of unison but kind of not, and it totally interrupted Sam. And Sam stopped, and then he literally looked up in the sky and he said, God, why did you have to put goddamn trumpet players in a brass quintet? And then he lowered his eyes. And then he said, where was I? And then he continued. So my hatred of trumpet players was kind of was ingrained at an early age. So, and then in Dallas Brass, my that brief season, the trumpets were Brian Neal, who is a player and teacher down in Miami, who's one of the friendliest human beings you could ever meet. You could run that guy's foot over with your car, and he would just be like, "Oh, it's okay, Andrew. I'm sorry, my foot was in the wrong place," And then the other was Taga Larson of the Chicago Symphony, who's also one of the nicest people that you could ever hope to meet. They were the two nicest guys in the whole quintet, was the trumpets. And I was like, but I'm good at compartmentalizing. I wasn't going to let that derail my my preconceived notions. So but yeah, it is interesting. In chamber music, I'm telling you, the hardest thing is getting along. Like by far the hardest thing is getting
Yeah.
along. That the
Yeah.
Police broke up because they hated each other's guts. Like Led Zeppelin fizzled out like before John Bonham died because they started to hate each other's guts. Mick and Keith hate each other's guts, but they like cashing enormous checks and they do enjoy the music. But like those two, like never get a drink together ever, 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 ever. You know,
Yeah.
it's hard. It's hard. Yeah, it
I
really
watched a
is.
documentary on the Eagles not that long ago, and I mean, and it's interesting to see the tension backstage. But then as soon as you walk on,
Mhm.
and that's kind of what Empire, how they described that was off stage, cats and dogs, and
Yep.
on stage it was totally business, and they
Yep.
delivered.
Yep. They did. They did. Yeah. Would they. Empire was. There was an intensity about their performances in the heyday that was the classical brass quintet equivalent of Metallica opening that show in 1991 at the Worcester Centrum. I mean, just like an intensity, just like like a burning desire, not just to play the tune, but to play the version that they are about to play, that they are playing right now. It's just like that's the whole reason that you got the feeling their entire lives led up to playing right here, right now, tonight in this theater. Here we go. We'll see you on the other side, which was just, boy, you can't teach that.
There is a group right now that I think does that, and Mnozil Brass,
I knew that's
or
who you were going to
Mnozil
say. Yeah,
Brass,
yeah.
and I've seen them live twice. Drove from Indianapolis to Birmingham, Alabama, and back. My wife and I went down there, 8-hour drive. Drove from Indianapolis to some Eastern Pennsylvania college a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Took my college studio with me, and
Millersville. I was almost going to go to that gig. Yes.
it was from the first note to the last. You're like, oh my gosh,
Yes.
and there was never a point in the show where you're kind of like, oh, what time is it? You don't look at your watch. You're kind of like, if you look at your watch, you're hoping that time has stood still, right?
I could not agree
Yeah.
more. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've also seen them twice. It's funny now that I've been out of the band for like 6 years. It's like all the things that happened in the band happened like starting to be a while ago. I guess this was 8 years ago, maybe it was 2012 when we were in Austria, in this small town outside of Linz, Austria, that has this amazing concert hall. Like it's a super surrounded by farmland, amazing hall right in the middle of town, and they had a brass festival where a 2-day brass festival where Boston Brass headlined the first day, and then Mnozil, headlined the second day, which was really something. That was really special. And then they had like the entire town went to this party after the Mnozil performance. It was really special.
So you got to hang with some of those guys.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. They're so nice. Yeah. Yeah. Leonard, who I'm not sure if you've interviewed him.
Not yet.
He's brilliant.
I've had Roman
Mm-hmm.
and Robert Rother. I've
Okay.
got those two guys so far, and Thomas is pretty hard to get a hold of.
He is. Yes,
So.
he is. And Willie and I really hit it off. We hung out that night, and
Mhm.
it was funny. We were talking about like starting families, and like it was just like the road's really hard. It not that Willie or myself or any of us who are. I mean, geez, how long is the list? And this, I hope this doesn't sound obnoxious. This is trying to sound just like with like reeking of gratitude. How long is the list of tuba players like in history who have been, I'm talking like internationally, who have been able to play in like many, many, many countries in a full-time brass quintet? I mean, it's like, I don't know what that list is, but it ain't, I don't think it's 20. I think it's like way less than 20. I mean, it's
Yeah.
like, and there are some like great groups that just, and some of them that have never even tried to tour full time. But it's like, I mean, I got to play with like in like 35 countries with Boston Brass, and like in most of those multiple times, which is just kind of like, what, I mean, it's hard to, believe. But that being said, the road is hard. It's like over, as I describe it, it's kind of like the Colorado River forming the the Grand Canyon. It's just very slowly. It just kind of wears away. But yeah, I wouldn't trade it in for anything. So, but when it was time to hang it up, it was time to hang it up.
Yeah. Yeah. Every experience is valuable, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yes.
Right.
Yep. Yeah.
And it allows you to communicate to your students, right? Because if they're going to share any of those experiences. Yeah. Um, I want to talk a little bit, another left turn. We'll get back home eventually, right? Enough left turns. You've got these wildly successful podcasts and other endeavors that are kind of new. What in the world possessed you to want to start interviewing people and doing what you do with the Brass Junkies? And I'm assuming that was the very first thing, right?
It was.
TEM
started just a few months after, but yeah, so it was actually the result of a very intentional process. I'll try to not make this sound like too much of a TEM episode. But Lance and I were both getting out of Boston Brass at around the same time. Lance left in August of 2013, and I left in January of 2014. And but we announced at the same time in March that we were leaving, and we decided that we wanted to continue working together in some capacity. A lot of well, he's got more weaknesses than I have time to list, but my strengths line up with his weaknesses very well, and vice versa. We get along. I mean, geez, it's like we have regular meetings. We're like hosting online. I mean, there's like when there's like this much hair up on the back of my neck about something in his direction, which might happen like briefly every few months, and that's it, and it's always just. It was a communication issue, which is, I can't remember the last time it was 0% my fault, I'm like, you just move on because there's trust there, like just complete and utter trust. So we tried to figure out what it was going to look like. The one thing we knew was we didn't want to be on the road a lot, right? So, because we had a lot of connections and we probably could have, like figured out what the next thing was and then done that. But he's like, it's hard to get him to like go across the street at this point. And I like to travel selectively, but I'm not, it's Wayne Dumaine, who I hope that he'd be an amazing person to interview if you haven't interviewed him. He asked me if I missed Boston Brass like a couple of months after I had gotten out, and I told him, I was like, look, man, I said, if you and Rich Kelly, who was the lead trumpet in Boston Brass when I got there, is one of my dearest friends in the world, and Marty Hackelman and Joe Alessi told me that you guys were forming a band and that you wanted me to be the tuba. It's like, first of all, I'd put that in my bio because that would be one of the biggest honor of my life. Those four guys were like, we want hits. But I was like, but I would say no. If you wanted to be on the road 4 months a year, it would be like, and it wouldn't be a hard no. It wouldn't be like a difficult no. I wouldn't be like, let me run this by my wife. It would be a no on the spot. I'm just like, I just don't have it in me right now. So the business term is, what is your unfair advantage? And what Lance and I figured out that our unfair advantage through circumstance is that that I have a relationship with Joe Alessi such that when I text him, I have his number. When I text him, he texts me back. Which young me would be blown away by that. But at this point, he's just, one of my friends who roots for the Yankees. And I, point out every year, that they don't win the World Series, which is basically every year at this point. It's awesome. But it's like, and I'm friends with Marty Hackelman, and I've crossed paths with you, and I know Wayne Dumaine, and et cetera. And
I appreciate you throwing me in there, but I'm not on that. I'm not on that.
But you know what I mean, though. It's like
it's
like it's major college teachers, major players, and we're pretty entrenched in that. The other thing with a gig like Boston Brass is that you can be in the Chicago Symphony and you don't travel a lot, right? You tour every once in a while, but you don't travel a ton. We used to go everywhere, so we would there you go, holding up Doc Severinson's number. There you go.
I'll have to blur that out.
That's really funny. But the point is that you can be in the Chicago Symphony. You cannot be face to face with lots of people during your time. You go and you play at the highest levels, humanly possible. Then you go back to your house. With Boston Brass, we're like front of the stage, front and center. We are passing through LA multiple times a year. We are passing through Tacoma, Washington. We are passing through through Little Rock, through Tallahassee, through everywhere, every year or two. So and we're in the lobby, we're shaking hands and kissing babies and going out afterwards with whoever the major cats are in town. It's just like, it was like a 14-year, networking event, basically. So we know everybody in our tiny corner of the universe. And so we realized that people want to hear, our whole business, our whole concept for the Brass Junkies is me and Lance hanging out with Joe Alessi, and we're just shooting the shit with him, and we're just talking about the stuff. And it's a little bit more on topic than we would normally, because Joe and I do argue about sports a lot with a smile on our face. And I think we did that when we interviewed him, but we didn't spend a ton of time. He talked about his parents, who were both musicians, whatever. But it's very much just a hangout kind of a vibe. And that was something that a lot of people don't ever get to know Joe, who I keep bringing up just because he's on my mind, in that kind of a capacity, right? Don't get to just hear Rex Richardson just hanging out, just like, Rex with friends. And like Lance, if you haven't heard our interview with Rex, Lance does, I can't imagine anyone doing a better Rex Richardson voice impersonation than Lance. And so, because Rex got that thing, and then Lance does it back to him, and then Rex is like, "Oh shit!" And then Lance said, and the two of them went. They had a conversation as two Rexes for like a minute, and there were tears streaming down my face.
I have not heard that episode yet. I'm going to have to find that. Yeah,
it's really good. So we, I think the moral of the story here also is like, be yourself, right? We got an Apple Podcast / iTunes review, I don't know, 4 months ago, that like the title, it was 2 out of 5 stars, and it said so many stories. And it was basically like, it was somebody was like, they get really great guests, but they never shut up. They tell too many stories. Like, this is a good podcast that's worth your time in spite of the hosts and all of the stories they tell. I mean, it was like 3 sentences, and they mentioned how we tell lots of stories like 4 times, right?
Right.
Any of your listeners who've never heard me, before can tell. It's not like exactly like you're asking me a question and then I answer it for 45 seconds and then I sit here and wait for the next question. Like, I enjoy telling stories, and especially about the stuff that I get guests I'm interested in, so I want to talk to them. And you're asking me about Sam and Empire and about playing in youth orchestra with David Gordon, and it's like that stuff I want to, like it's exciting for me to talk about. But if you want a podcast with those people, just like with just questions, that then like either it exists or start one, But like for us, it's just kind of like it's the behind the scenes thing, because if we were to, I was going to say dumb it down, that's judgmental, and I truly don't mean it that way. If we were to water it down and not spend those 3 minutes just completely just mocking Rex mercilessly for whatever is going on with his voice. He's a dear friend of both of ours, right? And he's like a famous trumpet player and pedagogue, and we could have fit another question in. But then we would just kind of be like every other podcast, right? And some people would like it more. A whole bunch of people who love it would like it a little less. And when you try and appeal to everybody, you appeal to nobody. And, and so
Right.
You just do your thing. So Lance and I were like, we love hanging out with like interesting people. And the thing about a podcast, right, is that like, and not that you don't necessarily be like, it would be fun to talk to is Andrew Hitz. Then afterwards you're like, note to self, that was not as fun as I thought it would be. But you get to steer the ship, right? I mean, if you had heard the Brass Junkies and really hated my part on that, then you don't have to ask me on your podcast. That's the beautiful thing about it.
But see, and I will say it, this has been a blast for me, right? Because I get to sit and ask the questions, right? And and what I love, and I think I told you this before, is when you get a guest, right, that you don't have to pull anything out of. They just go.
Yes.
And you just sit there and you're like, yeah, oh yeah, right. And you're like, and you want to jump in sometimes and grab onto something, but you're like, okay, gotta let them finish this. And then they make another point. And you're like, okay, I got to follow that one too. But I think that's and I learned early on that I'm not here to get your entire life story.
Right.
Right. I mean, Somebody could go to your website and find your bio, or they could call and talk to you and say, I want your life story. I mean, that's not what I'm here for. That's not what you're there for.
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
my long form bio is like andrewhitz.com/bio. You can read the whole, it's like the 7 paragraph version. Yeah,
yeah,
boy, nothing sucks the air out of a room than when a presenter is like, announce Boston Brass. They would always say, "What do you want us to say?" And now, and that's a legitimate question because some groups don't talk to the audience, whatever. But we would say, no joke, we would say, "Ladies and gentlemen, Boston Brass." That's all. And we understand if you have some other things, other announcements, whatever. But for us, just say, "Ladies and gentlemen, Boston Brass," 5 words, and that's it. And sometimes they would literally read the whole group blurb out of the program, and it was just like, and it's fine. But by the time we walked out, it's like yeah, it's 8:07 and it's like
right.
7 minutes of talking. It's like so much better just be like, "Thank you so much. We're doing a fundraiser. They're going to be in the lobby at intermission. Ladies and gentlemen, Boston Brass." And then we storm on and the place goes nuts. And then we play a real, not as good as Phish opening New Year's 93 at the Worcester Centrum. But, but something exciting. And then we're like off and running. So yeah, I'm with you. You don't try and cover everything. I'd
Yeah.
rather hear you. I had a student back when I was studying at studying when I was teaching at I was getting paid, not paying. I think that means teaching at Shenandoah Conservatory. I taught brass lit class, and somebody came in to talk about it was a doctoral student, Bra- Brandon something. Anyway, he talked about about like Baroque trumpets is what he came in and talked about. And let me put a fine point on this. To say that I don't care about Baroque trumpets is an understatement. And I say that, and I'm obviously putting that in a funny way. Honest to God, I say that with no judgment whatsoever. There's like an infinite number of subjects, and that is something that I will never enter into YouTube's search term to watch, perform, to hear like anything. However, the reason I'm bringing this up is because this guy who was a doctoral student, he talked to us for 20 minutes, which is what I asked him to do, on Baroque trumpets and like the actual trumpets. He brought some, and on some of the literature. It was painfully obvious to me in the entire class that he had a passion for this thing, and I was fully enamored for the full 20 minutes because I will listen. If you were like a nut about gardening, I guarantee you I could listen to you talk about gardening for 20 minutes. If you were to, I'm talking like different kinds of soil and how you tell and all that. Because if you started talking about gardening, I bet I'd be interested in it, because it's like, because most people don't do it that well. And if you've, cracked the code and you're in that feedback loop and you got the self-awareness and all that, like I want to listen to you talk about whatever you're passionate about. I'd rather hear that than you talk about baseball, which I'm passionate about if you're only kind of passionate about it. So
So, if I started talking about gardening and soil and pH, you would immediately go from pH to fish.
I, I I probably would. Yes.
Yeah.
If your gardening talk was boring me, then yes, I would just start fantasizing about the show I saw 25 years ago today in Portland, Maine. So yes.
And to be fair and balanced, I don't really care a whole lot about Baroque tuba. So there we go, just to get that out there.
And I swear there's no judgment there. There really isn't. There is just, like because yeah, I want to be clear about that. It's like, it's not like I don't think it's bad or not worth my time, or that I like music that's better. I mean, it is better and I'm right, but so are you if Baroque trumpet is your thing and you think that's right, I mean, like,
Right.
yeah, or I've never heard Haydn's Eighth Symphony, and I hope to keep that streak alive until the day I die, because early Haydn is just like, what are we doing here? It's like,
Know what I'm getting you for Christmas?
what are we doing? Like, why am if I have the ability to listen to music right now, why has the universe put this music into my ear holes? Like, this is not what I need.
Yeah.
But some people like flip out on early Haydn, and that's the beautiful thing, it's like, you do you. And so I guarantee you, at least one of your listeners, if they went to see a Phish concert, would lose their minds. And then there'd be a whole bunch who are musicians who would go and would respect the hell out of it and would be like, I don't need to see that anymore. And then there'd be some who would sit through the first set, which is about 90 minutes, and then be like, that was half of it. Like, get me the hell out of here. Right. So, but that's the beauty of it. Art is subjective, and everybody's right about it. Right. There are people who don't like your podcast. There are people who love your podcast. There are people who who like it and don't love it, don't hate it. They're all right. They're all right. Yeah, they just are.
I want to ask a little about TEM. Are we okay on time to
Yep,
chat
absolutely.
about that? Okay. So, it's one thing to have this network of all these people that you can call and say, hey, I want to talk to you on my show. But it's another thing to get the kind of business acumen, the insight into marketing and networking and all of these things that you talk about on TM. Where in the world did that come from? Was it from being on the road with those groups?
Some of it, yes, some of it was, although I'll be honest, for the first many years I was on the road with Boston Brass, I did two things. One was, to the best of my ability, play the crap out of the tuba every night. And the other was that I handled all of the group's travel arrangements, which was, there's a little bit of creativity there because we would have to like deadhead cars and there was a lot of combinations and we worked with a travel agent and I was like, but it was, I mean, you could get, it would take an exceptional one, but you could get a really talented and organized and driven high school student could have done that job, right? It's like not too many. I could not have done that job when I was in high school. I would have dropped the ball many, many, many times over. But I didn't really have that much to do with the business side. That's putting things lightly. And then all of a sudden things just kind of clicked and I got into social media, which was kind of like my gateway drug into all of this. Like I enjoy, I hopped on Twitter in 2009, which is not 2007, but like, 2009 is still pretty early for random professional tuba guy. I wasn't on Facebook when it was only, .edu addresses, but I was on that pretty early. And then David Cutler, who wrote the book, The Savvy Musician, was a very, very dear friend. He actually asked me to come to his first Savvy Musician in Action retreat and talk to a room full of there was like 60 or 80 participants who some of them were like professionals in the music world, like executives with, administrators with symphonies and things like that, to talk to them about social media. It's like, these are going to be some people who like totally knew what they were talking about. And as you know, just because you can do it doesn't mean you can teach it. So I really started to I started like frantically reading books. Well, David, bless his heart, who is like a brother to me, he tells me like 2 weeks beforehand, he was like, so yeah, I'm going to have you do a presentation on social media and on, and just broadly on arts marketing. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? He added quite a bit there. And I went absolutely ballistic over those 2 weeks, learning as much as I possibly could. And my presentation, my two presentations went really well. And that kind of gave me, that lit a fire under me. That was in 2012. And I haven't gone more than, I haven't gone more than a month without reading a business book of some kind. I don't think since then. I read the first two volumes of the Gulag Archipelago by Solzhenitsyn, which are like thousands of pages long. So I think those were probably my longest stretches without a business book. But yeah, I mean, I'm super into it. I was listening to Seth Godin's Akimbo podcast today. I am listening to an audiobook of Chase Jarvis, a book called Creative Calling, which is like knocking me out. I'm just like, I'm constantly learning about it. And I am infinitely more interested in that right now than in trying to speed up the last movement of the John Williams tuba concerto another 10 clicks.
But, that was going to be my next question and I think I've experienced a little bit of this too, because the trumpet is in its case most of the time these days, tuba, sitting behind him.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, you're really getting into this. So what happens when, the gigs start coming back are you going to shift back to playing, shift back to playing more, or are you going to stay focused on the podcast?
No, I will shift back. I will say that I have, for a number of years now, and part of it's because of my son being home for all those early years, that I haven't I haven't gigged a ton over the last however many years, but what I've gotten to do has been amazing. Like subbing with the National Symphony, subbing with the Baltimore Symphony, playing with the Kennedy Center Honors a couple years ago, and I got to play with Lin-Manuel Miranda, and it's like doing like or playing multiple times with Alarm Will Sound, who are just like I'm recording with them and recording session. I'm just so the stuff I've gotten to do over that time is like absolute, like, first paragraph in the bio, like type stuff. And also some, I've been selective about playing, like going to universities, playing recitals, that kind of thing. But there hasn't been nearly the quantity. I mean, like with Boston Brass, it was like I was on the road 5 to 6 months a year. And then towards the end, when I'd ramped up the solo stuff, I was on the road teaching and playing another month to 2 months. So it was like, I was on the road like 7 months a year with my tuba. Now it's much more sporadic, and I just kind of like ramp up. Like I'm not in orchestral shape under normal circumstances, like, full blown orchestral shape. But then if Baltimore calls to sub, not tonight, but under normal circumstances, if they said we need you here at 7 p.m., like great, I'll do fine, But I just ramp that up. I start playing loud, and I start playing sustain, and I start doing lots of breathing exercises and all that. Last night until I stopped, I was like playing Red Hot Chili Peppers, bass lines, from Flea. Last week I posted a video. First I posted in like forever of anything, of like me just doing just free the improv, like a 2-chord thing that got way out there. And, I was like banging on my bell, and, just like, that's kind of where my head is at right now. So I actually, for the first time in a very long time, it's been like in this pandemic, it's been not going to concerts and not playing any. Like I actually want to play brass chamber music again, like actively want to play brass chamber. Even when I was in the Shenandoah faculty quintet, which we were all so busy in disparate schedules that we almost never got to play. But that was with Jeff Pilkington and Mary Bowden and Matt Neese. And I mean, it was like killer group, and it was always fun when it happened, but I was never like pining to do it more actively. And I adore every one of those humans, and I adore all of those musicians as well. And it was just, there was just so much of that. It's like for so many years, like I'm ready. We do have a group called Cones and Tones with JD Shaw on horn and Lance on euphonium and me on tuba and David Cutler on piano, which we recorded an album like 2 years ago, and I listened to these like, I don't know, last month, and I was knocked out by how good it is. Like, but it's like hasn't been put together. I have no idea when it's going to see the light of day. I'd love for that to get a little bit more play. Like, I think I'm going to be more proactive in creating a few performing, circumstances for when I get out, when we get out of this, this dungeon. So.
Okay, so for people that aren't familiar with Brass Junkies, the 12 people that are not, they need to check it out. And TEM, you could have picked a much better word for me. I cannot pronounce entrepreneurial unless I go syllable by.
I misspell it like half the times that I try and type it.
It's one of the worst, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Yeah. But if people aren't familiar with that, I think both of those are terrific resources. And I honestly, I'm not saying this just because you're my guest on this. I listen to ATEM at least once a day.
Wow.
I go out on a walk, and that's the first thing I queue up.
Wow, that's awesome.
And, kind of gets things going here. But
that's great.
Just a great resource. So thanks for putting that out there.
Yeah, thank you. That's as you know, even when you interview people, it can be a little lonely. You just kind of yap into the mic, and there's a lot of work, and there's not necessarily, when I played the tuba, and I was very lucky that I had a career where, again, I was at the front of the stage for those 14 years. And there was like, you play and you bring it, and the crowd would always bring it. I mean, it was like immediate dopamine hit, right? Like immediate. It was like you put the post on Facebook, and then you get all 130 likes that are coming all right away. You don't have to watch them stream in. And podcasting is like the exact opposite of that, right? You like put together a solo episode, then it's got to get put to, you record it and then it's got to get put together and posted in this. And then just because it releases on Tuesday morning doesn't mean everybody listens to it. And then it's just kind of streams in. And then over time, you're like, thousands of people listen to this every month, which is great. So the audience is there and there's metrics and all that, but it's like so much. Again, even orchestral, you can play the crap out of some real delicate, nuanced Ravel or whatever in the, tuba in the back, which isn't necessarily super hard tuba part, but hard to play, or Brahms too. That tuba part's really easy. It ain't easy to play it as well as Chester Schmitz used to play it, like in the Boston Symphony. Those like just 2-note phrases at the ends of those first movement chorales that were just like every part of it was perfection, But even that, it's like, you don't have people screaming right away, and then afterwards everybody screams, and then you just go home. It's like, the quintet thing, it was like right away,
Yeah.
And the podcasting is the slow burn. So I long-winded way of saying thank you. I appreciate the feedback very much.
You're very welcome. So I want to wrap up. I don't want to wrap up. I want to keep going, but we could. I always say we could use this as an excuse to get together again some other time.
There you go.
Right?
That works.
But
what about tomorrow morning? What are you doing?
Sounds great. Just wait. If I'm not there right away, just wait on Zoom for me. I'll eventually show up.
I'll just have my lights on. Like, where is Larry? I think he's standing me up. He's ghosting me. That's what the kids call it now, ghosting.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I wouldn't do that. I would not do that. But no, thank you very much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks for doing what you do.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Well, we've got our own club now. This is fantastic.
Yeah, there we go. Let's go another 10 minutes of telling each other how wonderful we are. It's like it makes for super good radio.
Yeah, well, it would not make at all. All right, well, we'll wrap right there.
Okay.
For the interviews. Thanks very much.
Great. Yeah, that was fun.
All
Great
right,
job.
have a good night. Thanks.
All right, man. All right, bye.